I stood in the middle of her empty bedroom, clutching the one thing I was never supposed to see, her diary. For 6 months, I had dedicated every waking hour to a single goal, making sure Sarah lost everything, and I succeeded. I watched her get fired. I watched her fiancé walk out the door, and I was the one who made sure her own family stopped taking her calls. I told myself she deserved it. I told myself I was the victim of her ultimate betrayal. But then, I opened this book. By the time I reached the entry from October 14th, my heart didn't just drop, it stopped. Everything I thought I knew about that night, every lie I used to fuel my revenge, was stripped away by her handwriting. I wasn't the victim. I was the architect of a nightmare. Sarah wasn't hiding a secret from me to hurt me. She was hiding a secret to protect my life from falling apart. And in return, I burned her world to the ground. If you've ever felt the burning urge to get even, to expose someone who wronged you, you need to hear this, because I'm going to show you exactly how I orchestrated her downfall, the specific lies I spread that everyone believed, and the exact sentence in this diary that made me realize I had destroyed the only person who ever truly had my back. This isn't just a story about a friendship ending. It's a confession of how I became the person I hated most, and why by the time the truth came out, there was no one left to apologize to. To understand why I went as far as I did, you have to understand who we were. Sarah and I weren't just friends, we were a unit. Since the 3rd grade, there was no me without her. We shared clothes, passwords, and eventually our professional dreams. So when my startup's confidential investor deck leaked to our biggest competitor, effectively bankrupting me overnight, I didn't just lose a business, I lost my sanity. And because Sarah was the only person with access to my cloud drive, the math was simple. She was the traitor. I didn't confront her, not at first. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but I preferred mine frozen. I started with her fiancé, Mark. I knew his insecurities like the back of my hand because Sarah had confided them in me during our late-night wine sessions. I planted seeds of doubt. No whispering about late nights she supposedly spent at the office and accidental sightings of her ex at the local bistro. I wasn't just telling stories. I was crafting a reality. I created burner accounts, sent anonymous tips, and even doctored a few ambiguous photos. I watched, with a sick sense of justice, as their 3-year relationship crumbled in less than 3 weeks. But I didn't stop there. I went for her reputation. I knew her boss valued loyalty above all else. A few carefully placed concerns about her mental state and some misplaced confidential files later, Sarah was escorted out of the building by security. I was the one who picked her up that day, acting as the shoulder to cry on, all while I was the one who had sharpened the knife in her back. I felt powerful. I felt like the universe's hand of karma. And you might think you're a good person. You might think you'd never go this far. But when you're convinced someone has robbed you of your entire future, your moral compass doesn't just break. It spins until north is south. I wanted her to feel the isolation I felt when my bank account hit 0. I wanted her to know what it felt like to be the villain in everyone's story. I spent 6 months systematically deleting Sarah from the social fabric of our town. I made her a ghost before she was even gone. Every time she called me, sobbing, wondering why the world had turned against her, I told her it was just a bad string of luck and that I would always be there for her. I relished the irony. I was her only friend left, the only person she trusted, while I was the very person dismantling her life piece by piece. I thought I was winning, and I thought I was the genius who got away with the perfect crime. But here's the thing about the truth I had built my revenge on. It was built on a foundation of absolute silence. Sarah never defended herself. She never fought back against the rumors. She never even questioned why everything was falling apart at once. She just took it. And as I sat in her empty room yesterday, surrounded by the boxes of a life I had forced her to pack up, I realized why she never fought me. I opened the diary to what I thought would be her confession of the leak. I wanted to see her admit she betrayed me so I could finally feel no guilt for what I'd done. But as my eyes scanned the first page, the room went cold because the diary wasn't hidden under a mattress or locked in a safe. It was sitting on her pillow, with a sticky note addressed to me that said, "In case I don't make it back, I need you to know why I did it." The first thing I read wasn't about the leak at all. It was a medical diagnosis, dated 2 weeks before my business failed. A diagnosis Sarah had never told a soul about, not even me. And the leak I thought destroyed my life? It wasn't a betrayal. It was her desperate final attempt to save mine. The words on the page blurred as I realized the gravity of my ignorance. October 14th. Sarah didn't leak the deck to destroy me. She leaked it because she found out our lead investor was a front for a money laundering syndicate. If the deal had gone through, I wouldn't just be broke, I'd be in a federal prison. She sold the data to a whistleblower for a fraction of its value, then funneled that money into a blind trust under my name. She wasn't stealing my future. She was buying my freedom. But while she was busy saving me from a prison cell, I was busy building one for her. The diary entry for November 3rd gutted me. "Mark left today," she wrote. "He called me a disloyal snake. I wanted to tell him the truth, but if I do, she'll find out why I really did it. She'll try to give the money back. She'll try to help me. And she can't. Not now." I felt a bile rise in my throat. I was the one who told Mark she was cheating. I was the one who doctored the photos of her at that bistro. I remember the smug satisfaction I felt when Mark texted me saying it was over. I thought I was protecting a friend from a cheater. In reality, I was stripping a dying woman of the only man she ever loved, because that was the second secret, the one that made my knees give out. Tucked into the back flap of the diary was a pathology report, stage 4, glioblastoma, inoperable. The late nights I told everyone were for secret meetings, they were for radiation. The mood swings I used to convince her boss she was unstable, those were side effects of the swelling in her brain. I sat on the edge of her stripped mattress, the silence of the room screaming at me. Every win I had tallied over the last 6 months was actually a nail in the coffin of the person I loved most. I remember the day she was escorted out of her office. I was waiting in the parking lot. I hugged her while she sobbed, feeling the victory of her unemployment. I told her, "Don't worry, we'll get through this." I thought I was being the ultimate mastermind, playing the hero in a tragedy I had written. The diary entry from that day read, "I lost my job. I have no insurance now, but at least she's safe. As long as she has the trust fund, she can start over. That's all that matters. I'm so tired, but I'm glad she's the one holding me together. I don't know what I'd do without her." I had systematically isolated her so that I was her only lifeline, all while I was the one cutting the rope. I turned the page to December. Her handwriting was becoming a scrawl, shaky, erratic. The tumor was taking her motor skills. "My mom stopped calling," the entry said. "She thinks I'm a thief. I tried to explain, but she just hung up. It hurts more than the headaches." I did that. I was the one who sent the anonymous tip to her parents about her stolen company funds. I wanted her to feel the sting of betrayal. I wanted her to know what it was like to have your own blood turn their back on you. I watched her sit by the phone for weeks, waiting for a call that would never come because of a lie I crafted with surgical precision. I looked at the sticky note again. "In case I don't make it back." Where was she? I checked the date of the last entry. It was from 3 days ago. Going in for the final procedure. They say the odds are low. If this is it, I hope she finds the book. I hope she knows I never stopped being her sister. I hope she uses the money to build the dream we talked about in the 3rd grade. I wasn't just a bad friend. I was a monster. I had spent 6 months getting even for a crime that was actually an act of ultimate sacrifice. I had used her most vulnerable moments, her illness, her fear, her loneliness, as weapons against her. I scrambled for my phone, my fingers fumbling as I tried to unblock her number. My heart was thundering against my ribs. I had ignored 32 calls from her in the last week alone. I thought she was begging for money. I thought she was crawling back because she had no one else left. I hit dial. 1 ring, 2, 3. It went to voicemail, but it wasn't the standard greeting. It was a man's voice, heavy and tired. "This is Sarah's father. If you're calling for her, you're too late. She passed away this morning at 6:14 a.m. We're making arrangements now. Please don't call this number again." The phone slid from my hand, hitting the hardwood floor with a dull thud. The room felt like it was spinning. I had won. I had achieved everything I set out to do. Sarah had nothing. She had no job, no fiancé, no family, and no reputation. She died in a cold hospital room thinking she was a failure, with only the memory of a loyal friend who was actually the one who had destroyed her. I walked over to the window and looked out at the street. Life was moving on. People were driving to work. Dogs were being walked. But the world I knew was gone. When I reached down and picked up the diary one last time, I needed to see if there was anything else, a final word, a curse, anything to justify what I'd done. But there was only one more sentence, written on the very last page, in a hand so faint it was almost invisible. "I know it was you." My breath hitched. She knew. She had known the whole time. Every lie I told, every person I turned against her, every accidental leak of her secrets. She knew I was the source. And she still left me the money. She still protected me. She still called me her sister. I didn't just ruin her life. I murdered the only person who truly knew me, and I did it with a smile on my face. And now, there was a knock at the door. 2 men in suits. They weren't from the hospital, they were from the trust fund office. And they were here to give me the life Sarah had died to secure for me. But as I looked at the diary in my hand, I realized something. This wasn't a gift. It was a life sentence. Every dollar I spent, every success I had from this moment forward would be a reminder of the girl who saved me while I was killing her. I had the truth now, but the truth didn't set me free. It was the bars of a cage I had built for myself, and the only person with the key was never coming back. The 2 men in suits didn't wait for me to invite them in. They walked into that hollowed-out house, their polished shoes clicking against the floorboards like a countdown. They laid a mahogany leather briefcase on the kitchen counter, the same counter where Sarah and I used to sit and map out our billion-dollar dreams over cold pizza. They started pulling out documents, notarized papers, and a check with a number of zeros that should have made me scream with joy. Instead, I felt like I was looking at a ransom note for a soul that had already been executed. "Miss Thorne left specific instructions," one of them said, his voice clinical and detached. "The trust was activated upon confirmation of her passing. The funds are cleared. The intellectual property rights for the startup have been recovered and transferred back to you. Now you're back in business." Back in business, those 3 words were supposed to be my salvation. For 6 months, I had been a ghost haunting my own life, driven by the singular burning need to reclaim what I thought Sarah had stolen. I had told myself that once I had my career back, once the money returned, the hole in my chest would close. I thought the truth would be my vindication. But as I stared at my own name on those legal documents, I realized the most horrific truth of all. Sarah didn't just save my career. She saved my dignity, my future, and my name, all while I was methodically stripping her of hers. I looked at the check. It wasn't just money, it was the payout from her life insurance. It was the sale of her grandmother's jewelry. And it was every cent she had scraped together while she was losing her hair to radiation and her mind to a tumor. She had spent her final agonizing months on this earth, playing a high-stakes game of chess against a federal syndicate just to make sure I wouldn't go to a prison I didn't even know existed. And while she was shielding me from the fire, I was the one pouring gasoline on her clothes. I thought about Mark. I had called him a hero for leaving a cheater. I thought about her parents. I had played the role of the concerned friend while I poisoned their hearts against their only daughter. I had even convinced myself that her physical decline, the stumbling, the slurred words, the forgetfulness, was just her crumbling under the weight of her own guilt. I had looked into the eyes of a dying woman and seen a villain because it was easier than looking in the mirror and seeing a failure. The lawyer pushed a pen toward me. "We just need your signature to finalize the transfer." I picked up the pen, but my hand wouldn't move. I kept seeing that final sentence in the diary. "I know it was you." That was the exact sentence I promised to tell you about, the one that shattered the world. She didn't write it in anger. There was no spite in those words. It was a statement of fact. She knew I was the one who sent the anonymous emails. She knew I was the one who doctored the photos. She knew I was the one who turned her mother against her. She knew I was the one who made sure she died alone, and she still loved me. She chose to let me destroy her reputation so that I wouldn't have to face the consequences of my own business mistakes. She chose to let me be the hero of her tragedy because she knew I wasn't strong enough to handle the truth of what I'd done. She took every blow I landed, every lie I whispered, and she tucked them away in her heart so I could have a clean slate. I signed the papers. The ink looked like blood on the page. The lawyers left, and I was alone in Sarah's empty house. I went back to her bedroom and sat on the floor, clutching that diary to my chest. This is the part of the story they don't tell you about revenge. They tell you it's sweet. They tell you it's a dish best served cold. They don't tell you that once you finish the meal, you're the one who has to live with the poison in your veins. And I have the money now. I have the success. Everyone who used to look at Sarah with disgust now looks at me with admiration. I am the resilient entrepreneur who bounced back from betrayal. But every time I walk into a boardroom, I see her ghost. Every time I check my bank balance, I see the cost of a life. I didn't just ruin my best friend. I eradicated the only person who ever truly saw me, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and decided I was worth saving anyway. I spent 6 months trying to expose a liar, only to realize that the biggest lie I ever told was the one I told myself, that I was the victim. So if you're out there right now, fueled by a grudge, convinced that someone owes you for a betrayal, I want you to look at your hands. Look at what you're willing to break just to feel powerful for a moment. Because once the truth comes out, and it always does, you might find yourself standing in the middle of a perfect life, surrounded by everything you ever wanted, realizing that you're the only monster in the room. And the worst part? There's no one left to forgive you. There is only the silence of the people who loved you and the weight of a diary that you should have never had to read. I live in that silence now. It is a permanent, haunting guest in my $1 million home. Most people look at my life and see a success story, a resilient entrepreneur who overcame betrayal and climbed back to the top. They see the polished shoes and the business headlines, but they don't see the blood on the ink of those contracts. They don't see the ghost that follows me into every boardroom. We live in a world that rewards the loudest voice and the swiftest judgment. We are conditioned to crush our enemies and claim our justice at any cost. But as I've learned too late, the most dangerous lies are the ones we tell ourselves to justify our own cruelty. If you are someone who refuses to settle for the simple version of the story, if you are looking for the raw, unvarnished truth about the human heart, even when that truth is devastating, then you belong here. This community is for the ones who are brave enough to look past the surface and acknowledge the shadows we all carry. By joining us, you're choosing to stay awake in a world that would rather you keep your eyes closed. But the exploration of the human cost doesn't end with my regret. There's another story waiting for you on the screen right now. It's the account of a man who thought he had finally outrun his past, only to realize that the victory he worked his whole life for was actually his final trap. It explores that same razor-thin line between being a hero and becoming a monster, a line I crossed before I even knew I was walking it. Click that video. Watch it as a reminder that once you break something beautiful, all the money in the world can't put the pieces back together. I'll meet you there, in the next story, where the truth is the only thing that matters. Don't wait until you're sitting in an empty house to realize who you've become.